Good evening out there, Commanders, and welcome back to Algorab AM. I am your host, CMDR IFlippaDaSwitch, and this is your one-stop shop for everything to do with Sidewinder Syndicate, the Algorab system, Elite Dangerous, and everything in between. We are brought to you today by the great people over at Lakon Spaceways, but more about that later. Right now, we're going to get into the first segment of our show. We're going to be going over a little bit on the closeout, if you will, of the Key to the Heart expedition Sidewinder Syndicate has found themselves in the last 2 weeks, and let me tell you, much has happened. I got a chance to go out there, and I can tell you that I made some discoveries that, well, while they were both enlightening and breathtaking, some of them, frankly, shook me to my core. But that's not to say that everything has been harrowing adventure and miraculous discoveries out here. Much fun and merriment has been had as well. Everything from beluga bumper cars to SRV rallies, PvP events, you name it, Sidewinder has been out there having a ball. We've had over 30 participants in this expedition, which when we first had signups going out, we didn't have a whole lot of traction going in the beginning. Everybody was busy with different things, taking care of the system itself, going through, spreading the good word of Sidewinder Syndicate out there beyond Algorab and everything in between. Running trade missions, fighting pirates, you name it, and we were doing it. But we still got people together, went out there, and had a good time. And you know what? A lot of that is due to the awesome coordination by people like Commander Ashoka, Rear Admiral Pants, that guy Richard, you name it. So many people have played a pivotal role in how awesome this expedition has been. And I think I speak for the entire syndicate and those guests that came along with us from outside Sidewinder when I say, thanks guys, you did awesome and it's been a blast. Now, in recent news inside the Algorab system, with the majority of people preoccupied with different tasks running around, doing trade, trying to make that sweet, sweet space cheddar out there on the spaceways, but also with a good portion of folks out there in the expedition, things have been kind of light traffic-wise out here in Algorab. And that's not to say we haven't been busy. Trust me, we've been busy. The BGS has been hearing the good word of Sidewinder Syndicate. We've been out here running missions, fighting pirates, freaking bounties coming in left and right. On top of the fact that we have a lot of people organizing events outside of your average influence garnering business. We have what we like to lovingly call the Shitty Ship Showcase coming up, where we get ships and we try and make them as crappy as possible, and then we fight them. And to be perfectly honest, it's a lot of fun. You would be amazed what a hauler can do when it's engineered the right way. And man, nothing is quite as funny as seeing an Imperial Eagle fly around with nothing but frag cannons. I look forward to that. That's going to be coming up during the closeout of the expedition once we get everybody back to the bubble and settle back home right here in the good old Algorab system. Now, aside from that, the typical goings-on in the system, man, we've just been so busy. And I have to, again, tip my hat to everything going on with Sidewinder, because so many people are playing a huge pivotal role in what we have going on in influencing recruitment and how well that has been doing. We have had a lot of new names come into Sidewinder, and that is amazing, and we welcome you all. I see new faces around Forbes Terminal all the time now, and I'm meeting new people that are coming into Sidewinder, and people are coming up and asking questions about the syndicate and everything, and it's feeling good. It's a great sense of community, and we owe that not just to, our leadership like Commander Thea Gilly and Nova Hunter and folks like that, but also to our new recruits, because they're out there and they're buying into what Sidewinder is about, to the good times and camaraderie and everything else that this squadron represents. And for that, I cannot express enough how awesome that is. We're going to take a quick break. You'll hear a word from our sponsors, but when we get back, we are going to have an interview with one Commander Tytan Lannister, who has made what I think can only be described as quite a surprising discovery. Stay in your seats. We'll be right back.
For the most of us, we're smart enough to fear the unknown. For the rest of us, there's Lakon Spaceways. We'll get you where you need to go, and you can enjoy the view. So when you hear the black calling your name, just think of ours. Lakon Spaceways. Explore more.
All right, and welcome everybody to this segment, special segment of Algorab AM. I am joined by my esteemed guest, Tytan Lannister, who did a little bit of sleuthing over here and might have discovered something both interesting and incredibly creepy out there in the black. How you doing this fine afternoon there, Commander?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here.
So what we're talking about is you discovered something pretty crazy out there in the black, doing some exploration, some planet scanning, if you will. And I think it's best to hear it from the horse's mouth. So if you want to kind of explain what it is you found out there and tell us the story of how you came across this particularly creepy discovery.
Well, there I was scanning planets with the FSS like we always do. And they make those creepy little sounds, but most of it just sounds like ice blocks chunking together for an ice body. You hear a lot of wind if you're scanning a gas giant, right? But for some reason, I left that FSS scanner on a little bit longer than normal, and I swear I heard a voice inside all those weird ice cube cracking sounds. So I kept listening, and sure enough, about every 12 to 15 seconds, I swear I could hear a voice, and it was saying, "Speak to me." And it blew my mind.
Yeah, it was funny because when I heard you talking about it in the squadron chatter, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, I don't know, man. I've scanned a lot of planets. I've never heard a voice or anything like that. I mean, I went in with a little bit of doubt there, and then I went and I listened to the recording that you put in. And I was like, I was waiting. And then suddenly, like, you hear it. And I was like, oh, what the hell? So I went back and listened to it again and listened to it again. And then before I know it, I'm like, oh, man, he's right. He's on to something here.
It's freaky, man. It is. You think surely not. You think you're hearing things. But the more you go back, it's plain as day. I mean,
yeah, it was definitely one of those things where, you scan one icy body, you scan them all. And I'm going through and listening as well. And now I catch myself listening for it whenever I'm going through and scanning different celestial bodies out there and stuff. And so it's weird because it leads to a lot more questions, right?
Oh, it totally does. I started recording all the interesting scans I came across, trying to figure out exactly what was causing the voice. So I took a lot more recordings and a lot more samples to try to get to the bottom of this interstellar mystery.
The thing that really gets me is, and you had sent me a bunch of those recordings and everything, and different types of planets, high metal planets, a water world, neutron star, a couple others. And it was weird to me because on different types of planets, it seems like you can still hear it, but it sounds like a slightly different voice. Same phrase, but slightly different voice.
Okay, that's interesting. I hadn't noticed the voice change. You might be onto something. The only thing I could say for sure is that it only occurs on planets with volcanism, some kind of volcanic activity. That premise stayed true until today, because I've been doing it off and on since we first discovered it about 2 or 3 days. But today I scanned a water body with silicone geysers, and it didn't have the voice. So I thought maybe the silicone was canceling it out. But then I found a high metal planet with silicone geysers, and it did have the voice.
Yeah.
So something about water must cancel the volcanic voice, because that's the only one that had volcanic activity that didn't have the voice saying, "Speak to me."
And it's really weird because the first planet scan that you sent me was an icy body in the Schlegel system. And then you sent me 2 high metals of another rocky body, the water world, neutron star, which I thought I heard something, but I wasn't able to clarify for sure. And then the high metal silicate vapor geysers that you sent me. And the thing that I noticed was between the high metal and the rocky body, that's where I could distinguish a little bit of a difference in the voice. Still the same phrase, but different voice. Yeah. And so the question that this leads me to is it a sound coming from the planet, or is it a sound that's coming from the space in between you and the planet you're scanning?
It's got to have volcanism where it's not going to say it, so I'm assuming it's coming from the planet.
But then the other question is, what is the voice, or who is the voice, or is it Or is it even really a voice? Like the sound of like the wind going between trees and stuff like that can sometimes sound like someone, whispering something.
It may be a happy accident. Whatever sounds they decided to encode for volcanic activity and drop it in everywhere there's volcanic activity, whatever they did to it ended up sounding like somebody saying, "Speak to me." And as much attention as they have to put to this game, I just doubt it's a coincidence.
In the last couple of days, I've been doing a lot of exploring. I'm still out here, the Key to the Heart expedition. And I can tell you that after finding a bunch of random settlements in a couple different systems and stuff like that, and reading some of the logs that come from scanning those settlements and everything like that, it would not surprise me that there's, for lack of a better word, some haunted planets. Like, especially with some of like the written logs, like the text logs that I have been running into. With with going to some places, I would not be surprised if, not to overuse a meme, but like, moon's haunted.
Moon is haunted.
Yeah.
That sounds great. I want to go there and check those out too.
I think what this shows is that for as much as people say that there's not a whole lot going on in Elite once you get past the big rocks of like combat, trade, and exploration, stuff like that, you can still find little cool stuff out there like this, and I think that's pretty neat.
Yeah, I think there's little story threads sprinkled throughout the galaxy when you come up on a listening post, and it starts to tell you a little sliver of a story of a detail that sent you somewhere else. Put all the little listening posts together, it actually leads you to a discovery. I've heard of 2 or 3 of those so far.
There's definitely a lot of little things like that out there in the galaxy that it's really cool when you stumble upon it. I think this is one of those things, and I appreciate you sharing this with us, sharing it with the show. I hope that you find a whole lot more awesome, cool stuff out there.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just glad somebody could validate what I was hearing, because I'd been up a while when I heard that, and I wanted to make sure I wasn't hearing things.
Hey, just help me out. Make sure I'm not crazy.
Exactly. So that's a godsend. I want to keep listening. I want to listen to those neutron stars a lot more, because I think there's something there, but I'm not sure. And I'll definitely keep my ears open, brother.
You know what it kind of reminds me of? Have you ever seen the movie Sunshine? They're trying to take that spaceship to the sun to essentially refuel the sun because the sun's getting ready to burn out.
Yeah, I saw that.
There's that whole like premise of like they kind of go crazy getting that close to the sun. And like the captain of like the first ship was hearing voices coming from the sun. Space madness, that whole thing. That's kind of what this reminds me of. That whole thing of like, if you stare into the void long enough, it stares back type thing. And you get that far out into deep space. And I imagine at some point that kind of becomes a thing. That sort of, you're scanning enough of these stellar bodies. And there's that, 100th planet that you scan. And all of a sudden you're like, wait, was that? And then you go back and you listen again. And you're like, I'd shows to somebody because I don't know if I'm crazy or if this is amazing, And that's what this kind of is.
Yeah, exactly like that. Yes, exactly.
But definitely appreciate you bringing it to the show and sharing it. And I know that the other folks in Sidewinder and hell, throughout Algorab in general will appreciate you bringing this knowledge to us. And hopefully we can get more explorers out there looking to decode more of that static and maybe find more messages out there in the void.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope there are more messages. I don't want that to be the end of it,
Tytan Lannister, thank you again, Commander, for coming on. With that, I think we will transition over into our next segment. But when we come back, we'll have more awesome Algorab AM for you. So stick around. All right, Commanders. I don't know about you, but that story has me asking a lot of questions. Like, what else do we not understand about the universe out there? What is it that our technology is giving us little glimpses of, but hasn't quite shown us the full picture yet? I tell you, talking to Tytan, it's got me wondering a lot of things. Are there things that we have missed for so long? Has it been years before someone had finally listened long enough to a FSS scan and finally said, I think there's something there? It makes you wonder. But one thing that also makes me wonder is some of the discoveries I made out there in my short jaunt out in the expedition. Now, of course, I had to get back here to Forbes Terminal because how else am I going to do this show, right? Everybody knows that without Algorab AM, hey, how you going to know what's going on, right? So, of course, your good friend, IFlippaDaSwitch, made my way back. But not before I hopped a ride on the Rookery, got myself out there, and went down a little bit of a rabbit hole when it came to some discoveries. For those of you not familiar, There are some places out there in the Formidine Rift, for lack of a better word, it paints a pretty gnarly picture. The Formidine Rift is a set of discoveries that I made that kind of shows a little bit of a dark side to exploration. Some beacons left out there along with some transmissions sort of tell the story of 4, maybe even 5 possible expeditions that went out there, and they weren't really told why. A bunch of guys contracted to go out and lay some beacons out in the middle of the black. No real discernible reason. And going out there and studying some of the signals, listening to some of the recordings and reading some of the data logs, I'm telling you, it sounds like they were sent to find something, or maybe to let something find them. From what I can tell and from what they're describing inside their data logs, I think they might have been making early contact with the Thargoids. One thing that I can definitely tell you though, someone was covering their tracks. A lot of that data, it's not corrupt, but it's hard to get your hands into. And a lot of it, unfortunately, is outside of my technical expertise in order to dig much deeper. But what I can find on the surface, I can tell you right now, pretty gnarly stuff. You find yourself out there in the Formidine Rift, close enough to a couple planets to maybe register a signal off of one of those beacons. I say go and check it out, and maybe even make your own conclusions. Because while I think something nefarious is probably going on, maybe something a little backdoorsy when it comes to possibly trying to reach out and make contact with extraterrestrials, I still think that there might be more. And I think that's what this week's show has kind of shown us, is between the mysterious voices coming off of these FSS scans, things found in the data logs of the Formidine Rift settlements, I think it shows us that as much as we know about the universe out here, there's still a lot we don't. And maybe there's just more to be found. And while that can kind of be scary, it's also pretty cool. It leaves you a lot to look forward to, right? I know I'm looking forward to it. That is going to do it for us this week here at Algorab AM. I want to thank you all very much for tuning in. And remember, you can find us in all the places you get these transmissions, whether it be that old iTunes, a thing they used to call Google, this really nifty little push button application you got called a Podcast Addict. I'm not entirely sure what they all do, but they all catch this signal and hey, that's just another place to listen, right? And of course, hop on down to Inara, check out the website over there, and maybe give Sidewinder Syndicate a chance. Come on in, hit us up over on the Discord. All the links are there on the Inara website. You can join us and wing up sometime. But with that, that is going to do it for this week's episode of Algorab AM. I am Commander IFlippaDaSwitch. I thank you very much for listening. Fly safe, Commanders. Live dangerously. 07, out.